Hey guys, Adam here with yet another Donkey Kong repair, and this one comes to us from Jam Burglar over on Clav. And this board actually traded hands a little bit on Clav. This, I believe, was originally Doge Owl's board set, and then he sold it off to Jam Burglar. And he asked me to take a look at it. And what's interesting about this board set is when you follow the thread over on Clav, and I'll include a link down below, but it talks about this weird cabinet. It was like a Midway style Galaxian shaped cabinet with Donkey Kong running inside, and when you look inside there was all these weird fingerboard connectors and everything, and so somehow this found its way into that cabinet, and yeah, so here it is. So this is actually a weird version of the board set. You can see here, if I can turn this around, I've been told by Jam Burglar that he believes it's a very rare early Japanese version. You can see it's TKG SOU. This is the sound PCB. Usually you'll see a TKG 3 or TKG 2 if it's really old, or a TKG 4. This is a TKG, so this is actually before the TKG 2 board set. And if you flip this over, I think you'll see the same thing down below here. That's a TKG CLK board. And so I wonder if this is almost like around the age of, say, Radar Scope and those board sets. But anyway, this is the note that he sends to me. Let's see, it says, Adam, thanks for looking into this. I've never tested this board personally. I opened the box for the first time the other night to verify everything was in there. Note that the harness looks pretty jacked up. Yes, it does. Looks pretty jacked up to me, but apparently the guy had it hooked up. I have no idea what his setup was. Well, we know because we can see pictures here that it was in a weird Midway style cab. But I ran an edge connector style harness in my DK cab, and this harness appears to have two fingerboard type connectors. Who knows? Here's what the seller had to say. So the board works, but there are a few issues. Sound is off running and jumping. Colors are off in some spots. Maybe the monitor, and there are some occasional graphics glitches. In addition, there was one pot on the board that was noticeably broken, and I think I spotted that. Where was I looking? Down below there. You can see that lead, where is it, right there, is busted off. So we can replace that, it's not a problem. PCB has Japanese ROM set, level order, 12-digit high score, and has the ladder cheat. Cool. I found three different Japanese ROM sets in MAME. Two of those ROM sets, 2 and 3, have the ladder cheat, meaning this board is likely running set 2 or 3. On set 3, presumably the earlier set, the intermission screen says, how high can you try? On set 2, it says, how high can you get? Therefore, if you fire up the board, which we will do in a minute here, before you start working on it, you should be able to tell whether it's running set 2 or 3 by checking the game and checking the text on the intermission screen. So I'll tell you what, why don't we do that? Let's take off all this craziness. Let's hook it up to my setup that I have here, and then we can fire up, and we'll see what version we have and go from there. Okay, so we got all hooked up on the bench here. One thing I did spot was that these pins are actually much thicker than a standard Donkey Kong PCB, and so I had to use just these little leads to bring me over to my video cable, but that should be fine. And so, fire it up here. Let's see if we get any video at all. We do, but it's inverted. That's interesting, because this is a Sanyo EZ, which takes in inverted video, and that's a Donkey Kong PCB that sends inverted video. Now, the monitor, think about it, the monitor that was in the cab that this came from, I don't think was a Sanyo. So, if we assume that it cannot take inverted video, how did the picture come out looking fine? Oh! Okay, so these are the color proms for Donkey Kong. And so I know in some games you can take, in some Donkey Kong PCBs, they actually have schematics that show a little addition that you can make that will invert the analog video in case you have a normal monitor that does not take inverted video. So kind of take a step back. Donkey Kong and a lot of, actually I think most of, if not all of the other Nintendo PCBs, they generate inverted video. But in case you wanted to hook it up to a monitor that did not take that, a monitor other than the Sanyo EZ, you could invert it again. So it would take the inverted video, it would make it normal, it'd send it out, and it would work on your normal monitor, you know, your G07 or whatever. But another way of doing that, instead of adding that circuitry that would invert the video in an analog way, you can just take these proms and flip all the values. So if an entry in this problem was 0100, you could just flip it to 1011. If you did that for every single entry in the proms, then you'd be essentially inverting the video, but doing it on the digital side before it hits the analog part. And so hopefully that makes sense as I'm trying to describe it here. But I think, you know, looking at this is like, I don't know, this is whiteout or something that somebody kind of just put on there. This is not the standard Nintendo, you know, with a nice little sticker that marks the ROM location. So I wouldn't be surprised if when they set this thing up, they realized, oh, we need to have a normal monitor. We don't want to add all the circuitry to invert the analog video. Let's just reprogram these ROMs and we can do the inversion digitally. So that's a theory. Let me see if I can reprogram these. Actually, just for kicks, because I do have a normal monitor right there. This takes inverted video, this takes normal video. Let me just see if I can take this and send it to that. Alright, so I rehooked it up, but I have it now going just by these little clippies to my JAMA harness, which goes to this monitor. So now let's see what we get. Aha! So yeah, it's sending out normal video. So the only way to get this to work with an EZ is to reprogram these ROMs. Now the colors do look, and that's just kind of what we were saying too, the colors look a little bit off, particularly Donkey Kong there. But I don't know if the colors are actually off, or if these were the colors that happened to be on this older version of the PCB. It is interesting. So I tell you what, before I just go and reprogram these ROMs to be the same as, say, a modern 2-stack Donkey Kong, which would make all of our colors, you know, the same as that version of the game, let me do a little homework and see if that is indeed what we want to do. Maybe these are the colors that we're supposed to have. I don't really know. I've never dealt with a Donkey Kong this old before. So let me do some homework and then we'll come right back. Alright, so we got our color proms installed here. These are the new ones here. This one actually came on my own personal Donkey Kong. Just wanted to throw it in there and see if that was a good assumption. And yeah, it looks like we got some good colors here for Donkey Kong, Girders, Mario. All looking good. The only thing, obviously, that is wrong is the background. So the background is white and it should be black. Oh, my light just came on. So the way this works is this is the data that's coming in from the video PCB. And it's broken into two sections. We got these bits here indicate the color palette. So there's a whole bunch of color palettes in Donkey Kong, and each palette has 4 colors, and you can pick between the 4 colors. That's what these little 2 bits here do. 00, 01, 1011. You get 4 choices for what color within a palette. And so you'll see here they pick off the 2 bits here and send them to an OR gate, or actually it's a NOR gate. And basically what they're doing is saying, look, if these 2 bits are 0, in other words, if I'm selecting color entry 0 in any one of the palettes, this will go high, it'll get passed through, and it'll actually deactivate the color proms. And so if you deactivate the color proms, then all of these bits basically, or the video signals actually just get pulled high. And so this is a inverting monitor, and so if you send it a high signal, it'll invert it on the chassis and it'll turn into a low signal, and it'll basically just make all the colors black, right? And so that's how this circuitry works, and I believe that is how this should work. I mean, it's not a TKG2, but I'm assuming that it's fairly similar. Now, whoever messed with this got it to work with a non-inverting monitor, and they did that because they didn't want to see white, they wanted to see black. And so I have to figure out if they somehow modified this or did some tweaking or whatever to get that to be the way it is. I'm not sure. So far these schematics have been really helpful, and they've been pretty close to what's actually implemented on the TKG board set here. So I'll just keep poking around in this area and see if it lines up. And so I'll have to kind of just visibly inspect and start tracing things out by hand. It's kind of tedious, but that's really what I have to do to figure out what's on this end of the schematic here, see if they've changed anything. So anyway, long story short, let me play around in this area on the PCB, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so some progress. So none of this stuff seems to be there. Looks like this is all kind of in this unpopulated section here, but I did notice that some of the stuff is here, like these guys right here. And so if you go to the other set of schematics here, just a little bit of history for you. So this is the TKG 4 style, which is of course Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. The 2-board stack, that's what these schematics are. And you can see that this is very similar, right? I got my two color prompts here, and they work their way through this mess to a set of transistor buffers. And then if you look on the 2-board stack schematics, you get the same thing. You get your 2 color prompts, here's the data coming in, and then you've got your transistor buffers here. Same business with that little what is it, OR gate or whatever, to detect when you're selecting entry 0, and it goes through and deactivates these 2 prompts. So same. What's interesting about this here is that when you deactivate the color prompts, okay, all you're left with is this little pull-up resistor. See it right there next to my finger? Over here, you don't have that. It actually goes through a resistor to a buffer, and you get to decide what you want the output of that buffer to be. And so if you drive a 1, well then it works with a inverted monitor. If you drive a 0, it works with a normal monitor. And you can see here that by default it's pulled up high, but you can change that by scratching off this little, what do you call that? Little connector point here, J1. And so if you look over at the board set, somebody did indeed, where am I looking? Right there. So they scratched that off, which turns the monitor, turns the inversion on the background to go from black to white. And so if I were to short that, I'll have to bring it over to my bench, but I think in the meantime I could probably do it with one of these little guys here. So if I can do this in real time while you guys are watching this, and I short this, oh, we had it for a second there. There you go. That's what we want. And so I'm going to just quickly solder this, and then we'll get our color back to where it needs to be. Okay, we got our solder blob there. Let's see how it looks now. Survey says black background. Beautiful. That is what we want to see. Alright, so let me coin this guy up and just go through some. Now I don't even have the audio PCB. That's a good point. So I'm going to have to hook up the audio PCB and listen to some sounds and stuff, but I just am curious to see how it plays here, because I think he did mention in his note that there were some audio issues. So we'll coin it up real quick. And oh, that's interesting. So it didn't even wait for multiple credits to select a 2-player game. It just started a game immediately. That's interesting. Okay, well, let me just move through some of my motions here. My little guy Mario's moving around. That's good. Can he jump? He can jump. That's good. That's interesting. Let me do that again. I'm just curious. Reboot the thing. And so if I just tap this, huh? That is weird. The only way we could do that is if it was programmed to do that. So I almost wonder if it's just the nature of the program. You know, maybe this is a special version where as soon as you coin it up, it just plays. You know, I'm going to review the email that I got and see if there were any pictures that showed like a 1 or 2 player button on the cabinet, because that would give me more confidence in my understanding of what's going on here. But I do find that that is weird. Actually, you know what? Let me coin it up again. I'm just going to add a couple credits here. And let's see what happens when Mario dies. Which should happen right now. So he's dead. Should say game over. And let's see what happens. Yeah, look at that. It just boots up, goes right back to another game. Huh, okay. So yeah, I got to figure that out. I think what I'm going to do actually is probably, maybe I'll just pull the ROMs and then read them, dump them, and do a ROM ident on them and see if I can figure out exactly what version of Donkey Kong this is. And then after that, we'll throw the sound PCB back on and make sure our sounds are all okay there, because they did indicate some sound issues. But yeah, let me do that. I am curious to see what's going on, why he does that. Alright, so I pulled the ROMs, as you can see, and I verified them, and they actually come from the Japanese DK set 3, I think. I loaded up in MAME, and it does not go automatically to start the game when you put a coin in it, so, and that makes sense. So I guess the first thing to check is the input to the game itself. So I got the player 1 and 2 inputs are around here. And I just want to look to see, because when you don't press a button, these should be pulled high through a pull-up resistor. So it should be around 5 volts. And so I just want to take a look and see if they are 5 volts. If they are, then it's probably the buffer that they go through. And so let me just slide over here so you guys can kind of see where I'm talking about. So this is that connector right there. And they go through, and there's all these pull-up resistors. Each line gets its own dedicated pull-up resistor. It gets a dedicated series resistor and a cap also, just to kind of clean up the noise a little bit. And then it goes through a buffer. So what I want to do is I want to check these pins and make sure that they're pulled high. They should be pulled high through this pull-up resistor. If they're not, then maybe it's one of these caps shorting it to ground or something weird like that. If it is, then it could be that this buffer is bad. And so let me just probe this guy first. So let me see, where are we actually? 17, 16, 15, 14. 14 is player 2, 13 is player 1. And so where are we? Okay, so 17 is on this end. 17, 16, 15, 14. This is player 2. We're at about 5 volts. Very good. Next one is player 1, which is under a volt. Okay. So let's go back to the schematic and let's just double check here. Those go down through here. Series resistor, yada yada yada. Where does this guy go? He comes down here. Cap 3? 3 or 5? That's 3. 3. Yeah, 3 and 5. Let me look around here. Here's cap 3 right here. And so maybe he is shorted. And so I think what I'll do now is just lift him out. I mean, it's not necessary just for experimentation purposes. I can pull him out. And then if it's still low, well, then it could actually be this gate, something inside this gate that's shorting to ground. Let me pull that guy first, and then we'll know which one it is. Alright, there's our new cap. So let's see if that takes care of our issue here. Alright, so I'm going to coin up the game. And hopefully this will not go straight to... There we go. One player, and if I add another coin, 1 or 2. So let's try a 1-player game here. 17, 16, 15, 14, 13. And it starts the game. Sweet. Alright, so let's put the sound PCB back on. And then we can go through the sound, because I think in his email he mentioned some sound issues. So let's do that and see how she sounds. Alright, so I had the board powered up to my speakers and everything, and I was getting no sound whatsoever, not even a little hiss or crackle or anything. And so the first thing I wanted to check was power. So if you look at the schematics, and this is for I think a TKG 2 or 2 or 3, I guess, it doesn't really matter. Anyway, P3, which is this connector right here, according to the schematics, alright, you got pin 1 power, 5 volts and negative 5 volts, whatever, but I'm interested in this guy here, power. You can see the little symbol here that it gets tied to. If you go up to the audio amp, there's the same symbol right there. So this is the power for the audio amp. Now what's interesting is that when I looked at, well here, let me back up a little bit. So this is pin 1 on the connector, alright, which matches pin 1 on my schematic. Now hopefully you can see this. Let me see if I can move in a little bit closer. If you follow this green trace, it goes all the way across, it bounces up to this cap, and then sure enough it goes down to the audio amp. That's what we want to see. I checked out with my multimeter, wasn't getting any voltage whatsoever. And I checked it actually at the power supply, I wasn't getting any voltage, 16 volts out of there either. And so what I did was I cracked open my power supply and actually looked at the PCB, and you can see here that the pins aren't hooked up to anything. And so I started a thread on Clav asking guys, hey, I mean, is this, am I missing something here? Does this thing ever work with this power supply? And a lot of people said that they've had no issues with their TKG 2 and 3 board stacks working with that power supply. I think, what is this? This is a, well, I have another one here. What is this? This is just a standard, what is it? It is a standard PP7B. So they make a PP7B and a PP7A. And the people on Clav said, yeah, we've had no problem running our TKG 2 or 3 board sets with PPA or PPB. So here's what I think. I think that perhaps in the TKG 2 and 3, they actually pick off the 12 volts, which is tied to pin 5. Because I don't see how this would work otherwise. There is nothing on the PCB inside the power supply that is driving anything out of this pin. So I suspect that if you actually look at the traces on a TKG 2 or 3 board set, you'll see that the power pin for the audio amp doesn't get tied to pin 1, it gets tied to pin, pin 5. Pin 5, I believe, from the power supply is 12 volts, and that's more than enough to power the audio amp. So anyway, I'm going to test that theory. I'm going to basically just remove the trace to pin 1 and tie it to pin 3. Basically send 12 volts to the audio amp, and then that way this board set will work with any PPA or PPB power supply, and then this thing will work. So anyway, long story short, let me make that change there, and then we'll see if we can power this one up and get some sound. Okay, so switch that over to 12 volts, and I believe we have sound. In fact, if you listen, let me turn the volume way up. Hear that? There's a constant jumping sound kind of playing barely in the background that we'll have to address. The other thing is that I don't think the frequency is right for that. It sounds like too slow. But anyway, let me coin it up and you guys can kind of hear what I'm talking about. I already got credits in there, so I should be able to start a game here. Turn this up a little bit. Now listen to the sounds here. That's not bad. Alright, so that's okay. Let's move our guy. Hear that? A little off. That's way off. It's just too slow. So, here's what I think. The oscillating sounds like the run and the jump are driven by this 556 timer, and if you see a video I did, I think it was on what is it, Whitney's board on Broken Token. We had a similar issue. Anyway, I think it has to do with this 556 timer, the way that it's running. Maybe it's running too slow. Maybe there's components here that basically create an oscillator to drive that guy. Maybe one of these components has gone bad over time, or it's changing the frequency, that sort of thing. I'll probably have to throw a scope on there to know for sure, and maybe I can use my DK as a reference. But that's where I'm kind of leading right now. And so let me do a little bit of homework, some poking around here, see if this guy is running where it should be. So I decided to go ahead and throw the scope on here. We'll take some measurements and we'll actually compare it to this guy right here, which is my my own personal board set from my Donkey Kong up in the game room. So we'll use this as our golden model, and we can compare the measurements to this. And so the pin we're actually going to be looking at is pin 11. And so, like I said before, there's two oscillators in here. One I think is for the running sound, one is for the jump sound. This is the oscillator for the jump sound. And at first I thought it came from this business over here, but if you look really close, you'll see a little X, and then a snowflake maybe with a number 1. And if you look up here, you'll see there's our snowflake number 1. So what they decided to do was, let's forget about this, let's disconnect this, and we'll use this as our clock or oscillator for pin 11. So the way this works is you've got 3 inverters in a row. So let's say you started with 0. Well, that would get inverted to a 1, inverted to a 0, inverted to a 1. The 1 goes back around. Remember, we started at 0. Now it's a 1. And it becomes 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. And it just keeps going over and over and over. And it's creating a clock based on how quickly these gates can toggle. So that's a very easy and simple way to generate a clock signal. We're going to test, I think, what is it, pin 11 here on this board set. And I have my scope hooked up, and it's able to do measurements actually, which is a nice feature. So do I already have it on? Yeah, I have an auto measure. So let me just stop this for a second. Stop. There we go. So we are about 4.15, 4.16 hertz, which is, I mean, it makes sense. It's a very, very slow clock, and that's what you need for a sound like this. If it's something that it's audible, you actually can hear the pitch change like you can when he jumps, then that makes sense that it's a very slow clock. So let's take this off now. We'll throw it onto the other board set, and then we'll do our comparison. So here is mine hooked up to the scope, and you'll see that it's the exact same circuitry. So here's the 3 inverters that we saw before, And on the TKG4 board set, where is it? Right here. Same thing, right? You can actually zoom back, you can see them both. So anyway, I have it hooked up to the same pin, and here is our oscillator. And if you look at the frequency, it is much higher, 7.13. It's actually almost double. It's almost twice as much. The other one was, what, 4.12 or something like that, 4.13. And so there's definitely something going on with this clock. And so I'll take a peek around here. There's not much here. I may just shotgun it, start replacing some of these things. I mean, I'll check the values of the resistors and whatnot, but it may be worth it for me just to replace this guy right here, since I think it's like maybe 6 inverters in a single package. So replace them all, and it'll most likely take care of that. So let me see if I have this guy around, and then we'll clean this guy up. Here's the sound PCB sitting on the bench. And the capacitor in question that I pulled out was C47. It's supposed to be 3.3 microfarads, and here it is. I just pulled it out. It's 4.7. So that would definitely explain why we have the slower frequency. And I almost wonder, if you look, I mean, it's capacitor 47. I wonder if the guy who made this up mistakenly took that as the cap value and put in a 4.7 microfarad cap. Who knows? But anyway, I have 3.3s sitting around. We're going to swap it out, and I wouldn't be surprised if that takes care of this whole thing. Okay, new cap's installed. I got the scope on there, and we are at 7.4142. So that's pretty darn good. Let's coin this guy up. Actually, I think it's already coined up. I threw a couple coins in there, and let's see how it sounds. Actually, let me turn this off. That is super loud. And we will just start a game here. What is it? This one here? Let's turn this up here. And see if we can get some sounds out of here. That still sounds a little high. That sounds better. So yeah, I think our jump sound is actually pretty good. I don't know if it's identical to the other one, but man, is it close. I'm going to switch gears to the walking sound now, which I believe is driven by the other oscillator. So one of these oscillators is for the jump, and one of them is for walking. So let me play around. I think the oscillator for the walking is right here. And so I'll take a peek at some of these components, and knowing that they mistakenly put the wrong value in there, who knows, maybe they did the same thing for that one there. So anyway, let me poke around a little bit, and then I'll give you guys an update. So yeah, I'm seeing the same thing. I'm seeing improper values on some of these components. This is my DK, the resistors that control the oscillator for the walking sound. Resistors in the cap are here. And these values seem to line up with what's on the tube stack here. Where am I looking? I am looking right here. So there should be, a 10 microfarad cap. What's this say? 4.3 and a 43K. Those line up with this. This actually cap was wrong. I did replace that. That's now a 10 microfarad cap, but 43, 4.3, the decimal points in there, you just can't see it very well. Anyway, the markings on the board for the two stack line up with that 43K, 4.3K, 10 microfarad. And then when you look over here, of course I gotta spin this way so you guys can see this business right here. 43, 43 and 4.3. But if you look at the color codings, those are not 43s and 4.3. It's actually like 47 and 4.7. So that was wrong. And then the cap here I just replaced was 10 microfarad. That was wrong. So all this business is wrong. Yeah, so that would definitely cause a different frequency coming out of that 556 timer. These are pretty generic. I know I have a bunch of these. So let me just throw it on the bench again and see if we can get these values to match. Alright, so I made some discoveries, and it looks like I was wrong about some of how this is used. So this does actually generate a clock, but the clock is not used to set the frequency of the sound we're looking for. That's actually done through this RC network right here. What this clock or oscillator does is it changes internally how the chip uses this clock. So if we get rid of this for a second and we think of this is generating, you know, a certain frequency that this thing is going to run on, and it's fixed. Okay, so you see a nice square wave that goes up and down. What this does is it generates an oscillation that allows the clock to kind of get larger and smaller. So you have this nice square wave, but all of a sudden the pulses get wider over time, and then they get smaller over time and wider. And so that variation is adding to just the variation of the sound, right? So if you notice when you're walking, it's not always the same sound. It's not always dut dut dut. Sometimes it's dut 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 dut. You know, it's kind of randomish, and that's where this guy comes in. So I did find some problems in here that I got dialed in, so that's working well. But what really was the problem was this capacitor right here was completely wrong, and so it was a very, very small value, which was making the frequency too high, and that's why when he was walking, it was like chirping, almost like chirp chirp chirp. It was just way too high. So I replaced that with the proper value, and then it sounds really good. Actually, I think I have it dialed in good here. So let me fire this up. And actually what I did was I was getting tired of waiting for this thing to boot up and then having to get my little probe and start the game and wait for him to do the stop and everything. I said, well, forget that. So I just wired a little jumper to this little push button, and I have it directly into the circuit that initiates the walking sound. So you can see here, like the game's not even playing, it's in a track mode, but let me turn this up so you guys can hear it. Now that sounds much more, actually that sounds really good. It sounds the same as my other, you know, 2-board stack. So I think I have the sound pretty much dialed in, so why don't I clean up all this mess, put all the little bolts and whatnot back in that hold this whole thing together, and then we can kind of just do a final walkthrough. Alright, let's see what we got. Turn that on. And going it up here. And let's see, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13. Turn this up a little bit. Move our little guy around. Very good. That sounds pretty awesome to me. So I think that is going to do it for this one. Man, this is a lengthy, well, probably not, doesn't seem lengthy, but this repair went on over several months. I just got wrapped up in some other projects here at work and other stuff going on, but I think we are all set with this one. So yeah, let's think back. What do we have to do here? We had to fix the video. That was one problem. The video was inverted, and the background was still inverted, and then the sound, and I think that's it. I think that kind of encapsulates all the stuff that we had to go. I think there was some color problem issues too. Man, it's been so long, I don't remember. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for this one, guys. So as always, thanks so much for your support. Thanks for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do it now. And that way when I do repairs, you will be the first to know. So as always, thanks guys so much for your support. God bless, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching, guys, and hey, if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and check out some of my other videos on arcade game repair. Oh, seriously?